Welcome to Current Affairs Taiwan. We've got a great show ahead for you. Mike, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, let's see. We're going to talk about drugs.
Drugs.
Yeah. And the Mazu Festival.
Together.
And the structure of the KMT, which is old. And we're going to talk about the recall drive in Kaohsiung.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernie Sanders, because Bernie made everyone sit up and think today.
Yep.
And the TPP, which finally has a China policy. Well, a Taiwan policy. Sorry. So, hang around. We'll be right back. Hi. Welcome to another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. I'm Michael Turton, and this is Donovan Smith with a word from our sponsor.
That's right. This show is sponsored by Tainan Made Jam. This year is the 20th anniversary of this free all-original music festival. This year it is May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Check madejam.com or Tainan Made Jam on Facebook.
Wow, sounds like it's going to be fun.
It will be fun. Like I say, I've been to Made Jam before and had a great time. All right. So why don't you kick us off? What's our first topic?
Our first topic is prescription drugs. As some of you might be aware, China makes 95% of the ingredients that are used to make pharmaceuticals all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So if their economy is going to take a hit and their production lines are going to take a hit, price of drugs is going to go up. Get out there and get 2 to 3 months of medications, because this is not going to get better before it gets worse.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
A public service announcement for everybody.
Have you stocked up on food?
No.
I have.
Wow.
It's just an excuse to have a lot of, expensive ingredients in my house. That I can, I guess I got to eat these now. Oh, damn.
All right. So remember, everybody, stock up on your drugs, get some food so that you can pad yourself out for any upcoming problems that may happen.
Maybe we better stock up on Godzilla movies or something too, so we have something to do during the few months when we won't have any work or economy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, so one of the things that came out today was Yen Ching-piao. We've talked about him before. He's the famous businessman who's certainly not a gangster. And I wish to make this statement in public. He's certainly not a gangster.
He's a wonderful fellow.
And he runs the Junlan Temple in Daja.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is the center of the island's, the center, it claims to be, of the island's Mazu cult.
Mm-hmm.
And also the destination of one of the world's biggest religious processions, which occurs next month.
Yeah, it sets off from the Daja Junlan Temple. It goes south towards these guys carry their Mazu statue on a palanquin, and they carry it around, and fights break out. But mostly it's a very peaceful thing. But there's an intersection in Zhanghua where basically usually it's black-clad young guys affiliated with temples who often are from the traditional militias. They're essentially kind of like thugs.
Right, bravos.
And then they will fight each other over being able to get close to the palanquin. And some years the palanquin is stolen.
Wow, what a great tradition.
People actually get their hands on it and take it to their business or their home. And they get out of the way. They take it away from the organizers and run off with it. That hasn't happened for a few years. Last year, Zhang Anle helped provide security. That's the White Wolf. But yes, Yen Ching-piao, he's quite a character. He's been in jail many times. He's an ex-legislator. He was a Taichung County magistrate. And he's been jailed a bunch of times, and the KMT finally kicked him out, and then he became a nonpartisan Solidarity Union politician, which is where a lot of those KMT guys who got thrown in jail went for a while there.
So anyway, we were talking about that today, and it came out today that he had said, don't worry about it. Matsu's going to save us from this. She won't let anything happen to us.
So keep in mind, this procession has hundreds of thousands of people will participate in it.
Yeah.
All in close quarters.
And marching all across central Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's coronavirus in this procession, so it will be an interesting test of the government's policy to see, this occurs next month. I'm not sure of the exact dates, but it will be an interesting test of government policy to see whether or not they move to suspend this, which would be quite reasonable. especially since Central Taiwan is one of the known locations of this virus.
Yeah, Zhonghua and Taichung both have big outbreak. Have some of the highest numbers here.
Yep.
And this goes through Taichung and Zhonghua.
Of course, on its way to Yunlin. And where does it end up? In Xingang, right?
They've actually changed the route sometimes, depending on the relations, because they take the statute from temple to temple,
right?
Basically to survey her domain. But sometimes the relations between different temples is a little bit different. Last year they added a stop, I think.
Oh,
so
so anyway, I'm just thinking that it will be interesting to see whether or not the government puts a stop to this, or how it treats this, whether it will demand people wear masks and gloves, which would be very reasonable. But you never know.
I'm thinking hazmat suits.
Factories to print out 300,000 hazmat suits. How do I go to the bathroom in this thing? Oh my God. All right. So you were telling me about the KMT, and the party chairmanship election is still going on. You may have only heard about coronavirus, but actually politics are still happening. Mm-hmm. And one of the politics that's happening is the Kuomintang KMT party chairmanship election with two candidates who are
Johnny Chang, or Jiang Jitsun. He's a Taichung lawmaker. He's about 47 years old, and he's Taiwanese from the Red faction. So he's a Taiwanese factional Paul here in Taichung, not too far down the road from here, in the Fengyuan area. And then Hao Longbin is the former vice chair of the KMT and former Taipei mayor. He's 67, if memory serves.
Yeah, he's in his late 60s.
So both of them came out and said some interesting things. Johnny Chang has been emphasizing that the party needs to bring in young blood. And so he came out with a bunch of figures that he pointed out that of the KMT party membership, 3.16% is under the age of 40. But the electorate, 34%, is under the age of 40.
Wow.
So that's what he's been attacking, this angle. Hao Longbin, of course, he's from an old military family, mainlander family. He's the son of Hao Po-chun, our favorite premier. I'm being sarcastic if you didn't pick up on that on the podcast. But and so now he's a little bit older, and he said, with some justification, he actually came out and he said, this whole talk about changing the generations and bringing in young members is really, it's a false topic. And he said something along the lines of, if you ask a false question, you're going to get a false answer. And his point was, he said, Su Zhenchang, Yo Shi-kun, these guys are in their 70s. He said the most important thing is to pick the people with the right qualifications and the best talents. But then he went on to talk about what he said the real reason why young voters are not are not supporting the KMT. Some of those descriptions were a bureaucratic. He said the KMT has a bureaucratic culture, a lao da, which is kind of the big man,
right?
The
big man attitude,
elitist, selfish, and there was one
out of
more.
Touch with the grassroots.
There we go. That's what it was. Yes,
out of touch with the grassroots.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I thought those were actually.
They're entirely correct.
Accurate.
They're accurate, but they just don't include China policy,
right? Which
I think is the third rail in that party. They don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the big question mark is: would he actually, if he became the chair, would he actually do anything about any of these things?
Nothing in his past suggests that he would.
No. Now, we don't know. We can't predict future behavior, but I completely agree. Nothing in his past behavior suggests that he would.
Even if he could, there's still the powerful Central Standing Committee. He's got to get stuff past them. They're all geriatric as well.
Yes.
So,
which brings us to the KMT membership numbers.
Oh, right.
This seems like a good segue.
Yes.
So there's an article in the Taipei Times, and it said that a party source in the KMT said that they thought they were going to have 100,000 less voters in the party chair election this time. Maddeningly, the article didn't actually specify if that's because they had 100,000 less members or if it was something else, but I guess that was implied.
Right.
But the numbers are interesting. They have 310,000 paid-up members,
Okay.
of whom, I'm not making this up, 200,000 are not paying dues right now. 10,000 of those paid dues up front before, but
Yeah, they paid a one-time payment.
they paid a one-time payment. So they're no longer adding cash flow.
Uh-oh.
So 2/3 of the KMT is not adding cash flow. The party is a financial disaster. They're hemorrhaging cash since the ill-gotten gains law passed. They no longer have that huge budget. And, of course, they were well overstocked with people before because it was a patronage position and they had all the money in the world.
Right.
So they gave patronage. Now they have to pay pensions to all these people that they basically gave show jobs to, which is staggering.
I love it. Tell me more. Is it too late to get one of those jobs?
I know. What do you do? I work for the KMT. What do you do at the KMT?
Well, I sit in the office and actually I make tweets for Bloomberg.
Oh man. So anyway, I think that's now the Huang Fuxing makes up 80,000.
Right.
They're about 20% of the membership, but their turnout is much higher. And these guys are very deep blue conservatives.
And they're all gonna it's what we're seeing is the same dynamic that we've seen so often in the KMT between the local guy from central Taiwan or southern Taiwan and the mainlander. Hao Bo-chun is a mainlander from an elite family. And this is the tension that is at the heart of the KMT, and they have not been able to figure out a way to be Taiwanese and pursue their current policies yet.
Yep. And also, a lot of those free members, they're given away free to people over the age of 65.
Oh, that's right. Middle income and low income people.
That's right. So they essentially have packed their membership with people over 65. They've skewed their membership to benefit older members. And this is a party that now Johnny Chang is talking about. We really have to reach out to the youth, but the party's structured.
It can't.
I wouldn't say it can't. It's just extremely hard.
Yeah. Well, the way they set it up, anyway, I'm not going to help you, KMT. I'm not going to give you any suggestions about what you should be doing. But it's very gratifying to see this happening. So, well, speaking of Bloomberg,
yes,
Bernie Sanders was talking today to Anderson Cooper.
Yes.
Who asked him if there was war over Taiwan, which is a great question because no one has been talking about China or Taiwan in the primaries.
I think he said if China were to make a military move over Taiwan, I think is the way he phrased it.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah.
Well,
which correctly identified China as the aggressor.
Yes.
Which I thought was good.
But even more importantly, it brought this issue front and center where it should be because this is a major place where war could break out.
Yeah.
But Sanders says, that's something. He starts out, that's something. And then he stopped. And then he said, yeah, I think we have got to make it clear to countries around the world that we will not sit by and allow invasions to take place. Well, that's been all over the internet here. And the media is like, oh my God, Sanders says he'll defend Taiwan. And I think actually that's where he started with it when he said that's something. But, that could start anything. But that's how I hear that. Remember, Sanders has been sitting in the Senate for years. And so he's heard these policies. He knows he can't be very definitive because the U.S. government officials are never definitive on Taiwan. Right. Ambiguity is part of the core of the way they talk about Taiwan, which is absolutely maddening sometimes for those of us watching. But a lot of people are posting on Twitter and whatnot, don't overread this. Sanders didn't promise anything, which on the face of it is quite true. True. But it's important, I think, to look at one phrase he used, which is that we will not sit by and allow. Sit by is a variant of almost a stock phrase, sit idly by, which countries, China has used it, when we, during the Korean War, to say that they will intervene if we go someplace, close enough to the border. We will not sit idly by. Yeah. Right? That's a stock phrase that you hear from other nations, which is, a signal. And Sanders certainly knows this.
Yeah.
So that language might have been built into the way that he thinks about it, which shows actually the way that he thinks about it. The other thing to think about is this. It's actually pointless to talk about what President this will do, what President Trump will do, or what President Sanders would do, because intervention is the product of, there's a massive Taiwan caucus. I think it might actually be the biggest caucus in the U.S. Congress. There's the Pentagon. There's administration officials who will certainly be arguing for intervention, and there's Japan. Japan is not going to let Taiwan go without a fight.
At least not under Abe.
Yeah, and it's going to involve the U.S. Remember that any move that China makes against Taiwan is going to have to go through air and sea space that belongs to Japan.
Now, there is something, though, that I thought that Jenna Lynn Cody over at Lauren Cha, she asked a very interesting question.
Lauren Cha is her blog.
Yes. She asked, I thought it was a very important question, though, is that Bernie Sanders previously had voted against arms sales to Taiwan.
Well, if you look that up, what he'd voted against was one of Corbin out of Texas, one of his resolutions about selling, I think it was F-35s or F-16, some fighter aircraft. Yeah. So he hadn't voted against arms to Taiwan. He'd voted against a specific resolution that was actually something about getting manufacturing for Corbin's home state of Texas.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
and
even if he had voted against arms for Taiwan, that would not signal that he would not intervene.
True.
We actually don't know enough, and it would be great if we had more, but I don't think we're going to get more.
And from the other candidates. But on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. So today, yesterday or this week anyway, the Taiwan People's Party, that's Ko Wen-je's party, Ko Wen-je being the mayor of Taipei, who impressed everyone by being a maverick politician and then scared everyone by apparently moving close to Beijing. His party put out a statement today finally defining its China position.
Finally.
It's Taiwan position against China.
Wish they'd done it before the election, but yeah.
So what they said was Taiwan is a 主权独立国家, a sovereign independent state, which is not part of China.
Right.
And that its future should be decided by the 23 million people of Taiwan. Now, what party statement does that sound like?
Not the new party. Yes, it's basically the DPP line.
It's the DPP line.
But it's also, I think it's worth noting, is that the DPP line right now is pretty much dead in the center of the mainstream of Taiwan's political thinking right now.
The TPP cannot survive if it does not follow that line. It will just go the way of the KMT.
Yes.
Further and further out of the mainstream.
So this is good because it makes it more of a viable alternative to the KMT in voters' minds, I think, for a lot of people, except for the deep blues. But people who are more in the center, they've turned against the KMT because of their policies toward China.
Yeah.
The TPP has now moved itself right in the center, and the TPP just launched a think tank school.
Oh, really?
And Ko Wen-je, of course, is teaching the first class. But I think this is a good sign if they get good people in there, because the party has been really vague on what it really stands for.
Right.
I would love to see this party get some breadth and some depth.
Right.
So that's not just KP.
Right.
And they have some ideas, they have platforms. Because right now it's basically all just mom and apple pie. Oh, clean governance, efficiency. Who's not for that?
Right.
So now they're coming out. Hopefully they'll come out with more of these things so that we have a clear idea where the party stands, and they make themselves a clear contrast with other parties.
Well, they're not contrasting with the DPP right now.
Well, not on that, but they might on other things.
Right. But they can't. It's like we've been saying. There's no space where you can find a position between the DPP's position and the KMT position.
No.
And if there were, they would have found it.
And Ke continually tried.
Yeah.
And, the only people who come up with something that's different than them are the people who've come out with maybe some kind of joint sovereignty alliance,
Yuck.
or
Yuck. That's
or
the confederation that Deep Blues are always talking about. Yeah.
or
No.
or a net lose neutrality.
Oh, that's
the Switzerland of Asia.
Oh, complete with militia service and a gun in every home. I don't think they're ready for that, and they need to be. On Twitter, Paul Huang has been hammering this point home about how the Taiwan Army is just woefully unprepared.
Yeah.
And he's had a series of interesting tweets about tank drills.
Mm-hmm.
In most armies, you practice with live ammunition, standing tank against standing tank, moving tank against standing tank, moving tank against moving tank. Those last two are done on simulators. The Taiwan Army only practices standing tank on standing tank with live ammo. And the kids get very, very little practice with live ammo.
Yeah. And also, of course, the conscription right now is only, 3 months now?
It's 4 months, and then it's useless. Those kids will be useless in a real invasion.
So at some point, the government's going to have to address this. They're going to either have to get rid of conscription and move entirely to the volunteer force, but they haven't been able to keep the numbers high enough. Or they're going to have to make conscription longer so that the youth learn valuable skills.
Right. And whatever they do, they have to spend the money that right now they are so unwilling to spend.
Yeah. Of course, the Ma administration brought defense spending to under 2%. The Tsai administration has brought it back up slightly over 2% of the regular budget.
It needs to be way more than that.
It needs to be higher than that. And she promised in her first term she'd bring it up to 3%, and it's nowhere near that. It's something like 2.1% now. So, but yeah, Paul Huang had an article in
Foreign Policy,
I think it was, yeah. That was really quite a depressing read about the state of Taiwan's military. Now, the good news is I'd be willing to bet that the PRC military, the PLA, is not great shakes either.
No, I'd be willing to bet as well, but there's so much of it.
Yes. Yeah. They certainly have the quality. I don't think they have the quality advantage, but they certainly have the quantity advantage.
The famous comment, was it Stalin who said quantity has a quality all its own, right?
That's a great quote. He had some good quotes.
Well,
another one of my favorites of his is it's not who you vote for, it's who counts the votes.
Yeah.
It's not who you vote for that counts, it's who counts the votes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've come to the end of the show.
We have?
Do we want to talk about Fu Kun-chi?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got some time.
Go ahead.
All right. So Fu Kun-chi is he was kicked out of the KMT years ago because he's been involved. He's been in and out of jail, corruption, insider trading. He was just hit again. Some of his officials under him when he was the Hualien County magistrate for buying off reporters for positive press. And he just ran for county magistrate as an independent, beating both the DPP, as a legislator, beating both the KMT and the DPP candidates.
Right.
So now there's a move. The Central Standing Committee, I think, has voted to agree, but then there's a lot of controversy going on inside of the KMT as to whether or not to reinstate him. Now, the KMT has 38 seats. If he comes back into the party, then their caucus goes up to 39.
Right.
So there's groups in the party who are talking about we need unity. He's always been a pan-blue figure. But Jin Pu-cong, who was basically Ma Ying-jeou's
hatchet man.
Yes.
They called him the little dagger.
He has been leading the charge to try and get him to not be brought in. Of course, it was Ma era when he was kicked out.
Right.
Because he was trying to clean up the party, give it an image of not being so corrupt. So now the party's basically, most people are falling over each other to welcome him back. But there are these holdouts like him who are concerned that it will tarnish the image of the party.
Right.
So
I don't think they need to worry about that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so much for Ma's efforts to clean it up. Hao Longbin has come out in support of him, by the way. I don't know what Johnny Chang's opinion of him is.
Yeah. Well, Fu is a super popular figure in Hualien.
Yeah. They call him the King of Hualien.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's quite a character.
Well, speaking of major policies, we were talking about the TPP doesn't have any policies yet, but very quietly, the DPP is crafting major policies on many different issues. And one of the policies that they've been working on is the national land use policy.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out this week that policy is going to have certain exceptions for large projects. Which
so the question is, what kind of large projects? Yeah.
Was it going to be things like the HSR? Is it going to be a giant financier who wants to build a giant casino in the middle of Taroko Gorge? It's my fear that it's going to be the latter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are reading it that way. So, but stay tuned. It's going to be, that policy will be, these policies like this are key in shaping our world, but we don't actually see them very often.
No, most people don't really realize what they mean.
Yeah.
I
so
think.
we should do a show on this.
Yeah, we could.
At some point.
Yeah. And gravel.
We have to talk about gravel because it's the lifeblood of Taiwan's domestic political economy.
Yes. Oh, and very quickly before we go.
Yeah.
The Han recall campaigns combined have now collected over 500,000 signatures.
How many people have to vote in order to recall him?
Well, there's two things. They needed to get 200 and some odd thousand signatures to pass the second stage.
Right.
So they've already easily blown by that. And their target is to get 580,000 signatures, which happens to be the number of people who would need to vote yes when the recall vote is held.
And once again, if he's recalled, there's a whole new election. The deputy doesn't step up.
Right. So, and then that would wreck Han Guoyu's career, probably. If he defeats the recall.
I feel my heart bleeding.
And by the way, both Johnny Chang and Hao Longbin have come out strong in support of Han Guoyu, talking about how his administration is showing how they're proving that the KMT can govern better than the DPP, I think was Hao put it that way? They both said something along these lines.
Seriously?
Yeah.
All right.
It's on the KMT official website. You can look it up. Now, the fact that even if they do get that 580,000 signatures for the petitions to the recall petitions, that doesn't necessarily mean, because those are people, they've been going to people to get their signatures.
Right. It
doesn't necessarily mean that those people will go out and vote. In other words, that requires more work and effort. So we don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean that the recall will pass.
Right.
But if the recall doesn't pass, that means that then Han Guoyu may be a viable candidate next May in 2021 to become the KMT chair. If he loses the recall, I'm going to say that most likely he's dead meat.
I'm torn. I don't want him to win, but I do want him to become KMT chair. All right.
Okay. Yes,
and on that happy note,
he's entertaining. He definitely his
He'd
entertainment.
Be so awesome.
Yes.
A worthy successor to Hong Xiu-zhu.
Yes. Endless entertainment from him. So, all right. On that note,
thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you again next week.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
还有就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。
all right. Testing levels. Looks like I'm okay. Testing levels.
Levels are being tested.
Tested.
Hello, testes.
Yes. I was about to say the same thing.
Hello. I'd like to sing you happy birthday now.
Happy birthday. All right. All right.